Everyone. I said earlier that I was going to make a quick video today just to explain a bit about the markers that I use when I'm colouring images, let's say traditionally, rather than colouring them digitally on the PC. I often get people asking what my marker collection's like, what types of markers I use. I get a lot of questions along the lines of how do I make the finished colouring look so solid without streaks and, you know, not patchy. So I thought I'd just today do a quick explanation for you because I know a lot of people have asked in the past and have been interested. So this here, I'm actually going to have to move back slightly so you can see the whole lot. This is my marker collection. Sorry about the curtains being closed, but as you can probably see, the sun's shining right in at the moment and the camera just couldn't focus on the markers at all. So I've got a fair few. These are the ones I started with. These are a brand called Spectrum Noir. You'll notice there's a few gaps. That will become obvious why in a minute. It all came about end of 2014. I got signed off work and I was looking for something to do to keep myself amused. And I spotted online these Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Now, I didn't have a clue what alcohol markers were, never heard of them before. All I knew was that they had a starter pack of 72 different colours and it was $79.99. And my immediate thought, as I'm sure yours is hearing that, was, why on earth are these markers so expensive? That's ridiculous. I could go to any stationery store and I could buy a pack of 72 or more felt tips and it would cost me five quid. Why are they so expensive? Well, the reason they're so expensive is because they're not like felt tips. Regular felt tips that you go and buy, Sharpies, anything like that, they are made by mixing pigment with water. And what that means is as soon as you put them onto the paper or card that you're colouring on, they dry. So then when you go back over the top of them while you're colouring, it streaks. You get a darker patch. The difference with these is that they're alcohol markers, so they're pigment mixed with alcohol. And what that means is that they don't dry straight away. So you can actually colour over the same section multiple times and the ink will stay wet. So rather than just getting a darker patch, what will happen is the ink you've already laid down will mix with the ink that you're now laying down on top of it. And the whole thing will just become even and smooth and just a single colour. The only problem with them, although they're amazing, is obviously the cost. So eventually, after a lot of persuasion, I bought the pack of 72. And then there's one issue that I found, which was, I bring my colour chart over. When you look online at Spectrum Noir, you can get a colour chart. And as you can see, there's a lot more than 72 colours on there. So I got my pens, printed out my colour chart, I filled in all of the ones I had, and then there were all these white spaces looking at me. You know, oh look, there's so many other colours you can buy. So long story short, within 6 months, I had the whole lot. And that's every single colour you can see on here. Excuse this bit. This is evidence that Michelle is unable to drink without chucking it all over herself and her surroundings. But basically, this is what I use just to see what the actual colour that I put down on the paper is going to be. Because although these are technically colour-coded, the colours that you see on the caps aren't necessarily going to be the same. For example, JG1 here looks like quite a sort of bright aqua green, but when you look on the actual colour chart, it's actually quite a deep green. So if you were to go by that and wanted an aqua colour on your drawing, you'd suddenly find yourself having to redo the entire drawing. So yeah, so thanks to that, and thanks to this, I ended up with all of those. Now, these are fantastic. I would never diss Spectrum Noir. They were my first alcohol markers. The problem with them is one of the things that they use to attract you towards buying them is that they tell you that they're refillable. You can buy tiny little bottles of ink, and all you do is you take one of the ends off, and the inside is very much like a felt tip pen, sort of a foam inner, and you just put some of the ink in there and you start again. The problem is, when I initially looked at it, if you can see, these are all color coded. So you've got like your TNs there, and that basically stands for tan. So you've got TN1 all the way through to TN9. When I first looked online, I mistakenly thought that when you bought ink for TN, you got all 9 inks in one, and it was something like £11. And I thought, brilliant. It says that each one refills the pen 4 or 5 times. Fantastic. It's going to cost me 11 quid. I can carry on using those pens for ages. Turns out each individual colour, like TN1, TN2, TN3, they all come separately. So it's actually about £11 per refill. So when my pens started to run out after about a year, I started looking for alternatives, which is where these guys come in. Now, there's 2 different types of pens here. There's the ones down the bottom. These are a brand called, I can get it to, helps if I'm not holding it upside down. These are called First Edition. And these came from a shop called The Range in the UK. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically if you're looking for alcohol markers, it's something you want to try. They are a really good way to get started with them, because they are usually something like £8 for a pack of 6, which for most alcohol markers is remarkably cheap. They're sort of the same as the Spectrum Noirs. They come in ranges. So you'll have, one pack will have sort of all yellows and oranges, one pack will have all pinks, one pack will have all greens. I'm missing a couple of packs from there, but I've never bothered to buy them because I've got sort of duplicates of them in the others. But those are something that I can recommend. They're actually really good quality pens. None of them have run out on me yet. The colours, again, aren't necessarily what the caps show, but if I flip this over, you'll find on the other side, I've got my First Edition marker colours there. And then above them, you've got what is now my favourite and my preferred type of alcohol marker, which are these ones. And these are Letraset Pro markers. Now, they've changed this wrapping packaging not that long ago, so you'll find that some of them look a bit different to that. I think, yeah, I've got one there. So they used to be called Winsor & Newton Pro Marker, like that. Nowadays they'll look like this. However, you'll find you can still get a lot that look like this online, because a lot of websites will sell them off cheaper just to get the new stock in. Those are my recommended ones, but again, they're not cheap. They come in packs. You can get themed packs, but they have weird themes. They're things like manga and spring and happy. So you don't necessarily just get a single colour in a lot of different tones. You'll get a really weird mix of colours, and you'll actually find that the same colours appear in different packs, which caught me out. I at one point, before I gave them away, had quite a lot of duplicates. So the other option is that you can buy them individually, but they are in most places £2.99 each. So as you can probably imagine, to build up a decent collection is quite expensive. But I started out just buying a couple of the packs, which you can pick up on Amazon sometimes for about £20 for 12, which isn't too bad at all. And then I just supplemented them with these extra ones. Now, if anybody is interested in buying the individual ones, if you Google a website called Cowling Wilcox, which is COWLING WILCOX, at the moment they're actually selling them for £1.79 each, and I know this because I've just put an order in for a few more to fill in some of my gaps. Again, they're colour coded on the ends, but again, it's not necessarily always accurate, so I have a chart, and as you can see, these are some new ones that I've bought. When I get the new ones, I'll redo this chart completely. So that's my collection. And what I've done, and this is why there are some gaps, is down here, I've actually just opened some of them for you to have a quick look at. So let's start with the Spectrum Noir, because this is the one I mentioned first. Most alcohol markers that you find, you'll find that they're double-ended. Very occasionally, you'll find ones, sorry, camera's really struggling to focus on that. You'll find ones that have a brush tip rather than a bullet tip. But for the most part, they will have a bullet tip at one end and a chisel tip at the other end. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but I've always found that the chisel tip, the colour seems to come out darker than the bullet tip. So I tend to not use the chisel tip unless I really have to. But that's your Spectrum Noirs. The first edition, exactly the same. You've got a bullet tip and a chisel tip. And then the same again with the Pro markers. Just both ends. Now, why have I got these with the lids off? Well, the lids are off basically because I can't really take the lids off one-handed. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you quickly what I mean when I say that the colour goes over itself rather than drying instantly. So I'll use the Pro marker. Got a bit of card here. Now, one thing that you need to know about using alcohol markers is that the type of card you use is incredibly important. You need card that is as absorbent as possible. The reason being, because the ink stays wet, if the card itself has a very smooth surface, the ink will just spread across the surface while you're colouring. What you need is card that actually absorbs the excess ink through to the back of it. And when you're colouring with alcohol markers, a very good way to make sure your colour when it dries is going to be solid and exactly the same all the way across is to check the back of the card where the ink has soaked through and see if it's actually solid on the back. If the colour is the exact same all the way across the back, when it dries on the front, it will be the same. I'll show you quickly what I mean. So if I just draw a square like this. So you just colour with them the same way you would anything else. And your first layer, just like it would with felt tips, it's going to look a bit patchy. And if you look at the back, you can see nothing's really soaked through yet. And what we want to achieve to get the best possible colour and the best possible coverage is full saturation. That's what it's called. So it's literally a case of just colouring over and over and over until you cannot saturate that card anymore. And what I'm going to do, just to show you what I mean by full saturation, is I'm going to colour half of it like that. So you can see that this bit here is very consistent, but that bit there is a bit patchy. If you look at the back, you'll see the exact same thing. This bit here, which on the front is a solid colour, is completely saturated. The card literally cannot take any more ink at that point. Here, it hasn't even started to soak through. So, you come back to the front. Apologies for the terrible camera work. I really wanted to hold the phone for this one so that I could just move it around as I needed to. And you just, same thing. And as you can see, because the card is so absorbent, even though I've put a crazy amount of ink on there, it's not come outside the lines of the square that I drew, other than where I've coloured it wrong. But then if you turn over again, that's it. It's now completely saturated. There's no point me putting any more ink on. And if you look at the back, you can actually see... Oh, I wish this camera would focus. Sorry about that. I decided to open the curtains slightly, see if it'd help the camera focus at all. I think it was just a little bit too gloomy in here. You can actually see, if I can make it focus, which it really doesn't want to, that the ink has actually crept. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do on the back of the card. But on the front of the card, it hasn't. And that's why it's so important to buy the right card. Now, what did I mean when I said that alcohol markers allow you to blend? Well, quite simply, how it sounds, same as some, you know, blending with paints or anything like that. What I'll do is I'll very quickly show you with these three here, although that one, oh no, it is the right colour. Look like a slightly odd colour from the tip. One of the best ways to show the blending, if I get this, is by showing, let me just pop this out of the shiny plastic, is by showing you this, which is my chart of Spectrum Noir colours that go together, that blend together well to create hair colours. Some slightly outrageous hair colours there, but you get the idea. And this one here is a good example. But you can see where it goes from sort of dark at the roots and then you've got your highlight on the top. And to achieve that, it's literally a case of, I just make sure this is focused. Obviously imagine that this is a strand of hair, even though it isn't. It's literally just a case of layering up from dark to light. And what happens as you go over the dark with the light, it will pick up some of the dark and sort of, you see how you haven't just got a really defined edge. It blends it in, basically. So you do this. It takes more than a couple of goes to get a really good effect. But basically this is why I like colouring with alcohol markers, because it means that I can do shade and highlight really easily. You can see how if I kept building that up, you'd be able to see an actual darker area appearing in there. And I don't know if the camera can actually pick up just how wet this is as it goes onto the card. I don't think it really can. But it is very wet, and it stays wet for a good few seconds. I mean, you've certainly got enough time to go over it and blend it. And the good thing is when you go over it with the alcohol, even if it's actually dried, the alcohol will reactivate it anyway. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's it. That's how I colour images with what are, to all intents and purposes, felt tip pens, but it doesn't come out really patchy. And this is the reason why I would never be able to pick up a felt tip pen now and colour anything, not even a colouring book, because just the sheer amount of patchiness would just drive me crazy. So yeah, I mean, if colouring is something you're interested in and you do want to do it seriously, I definitely recommend alcohol markers. I mean, I would recommend all three of these brands, though I would steer clear of the Spectrum Noir just for the fact that they cost so much in the first place and then it isn't cheap to refill them. I would go for the first edition. But I know you can also, if you look for alcohol markers on somewhere like Amazon, there's a lot of people that do packs of 72 for about £30 that come from China, and they've been very, very favourably reviewed. It's not something I've tried myself. It's something I've been tempted by many times. But I would definitely recommend giving it a go. And if anybody does and you get stuck and you're not sure what you're doing, give me a shout. I'm always happy to answer questions. So I hope I've not bored you. I hope everything has made sense. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me some comments on the video. Let me know if you'd like me to